Socialization. Will my kids be weird if I homeschool? That depends. If you're weird, your kids will be weird. If you're not weird, they've got a really good chance of not being weird. So, am I right? I'm right? I know some really weird homeschoolers. I really do. But I also know some normal homeschoolers. Tiffany doesn't look like she's weird. She looks like she's normal, and I bet her child is. Well, everybody's got a little weirdness. But yeah, I'm very weird. Stacy is not so weird. And that's mostly her husband's fault, not her fault.
No, it's my fault. My husband would be weird.
Okay.
My husband would be a nerd. He is a nerd if he gets to like get into himself.
Into his stuff, yeah. Well, I'm completely a nerd. My husband is a nerd. There's no doubt. My children are nerds.
I am not a nerd.
Okay, Reagan says he's not a nerd, but Reagan is a video game nerd, so that kind of counts.
I'm a nerd about certain things.
Yes. Office supplies.
Office supplies. I love them. Let me have them. So
I love office supplies too. I think everybody loves office supplies.
I don't know what it is about office supplies.
Yeah, it's just something really cool.
Office Depot. I mean, I just love the thought of setting up an office. If I could do that for a job, that would be cool. Like, oh, you need me to go shopping and buy you all your office supplies, and I get to put them in your desk?
Right.
Yes.
Yes. And you draw a diagram for them so that they know where it is.
Kathy likes it too. Yep.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Crazy. That's why I have so much extra supplies for my homeschool room, is because I love them, which is crazy. Anyway, weirdness. That's weird. Weirdness.
Yeah, everybody has a little bit of weirdness in them. As far as homeschooling goes, as far as just, children in general, they're little sponges. And whoever you hang around with, like the gurus say, I think Tony Robbins and Gary, I can't remember, he's always on PBS. Anyway, they always say you are going to be very similar to the other 5 people that you hang around with. And they say financially, but it's also attitude and how you act are based on how you hang out with people who are like you. And so if your children, like, it was one of those things when I was little, my mom would say, don't hang out with them. They're a bad example, or they're going to lead you astray. And the whole, if somebody tells you jump off a bridge, are you going to go do it? And so, I think sometimes our parents had the great idea, or had the idea that, and it was right, that you don't want to hang around with people who are going to cause problems for you, or you don't want your children hanging around with people that are going to cause problems for them. And so that's something you do need to, as a parent, kind of keep an eye on. And children, as I said, children are sponges. We had to stop watching certain TV shows when my children were little. We had to, I never let them really watch Disney or Nickelodeon too much when they were, 7, 8, 9, because on those shows, all the parents are idiots, if there are parents at all. And the kids are, they're annoying, but the little brother is always just a brat, and so it was teaching my kids that, since I have an older daughter and a little brother, that the little brother should be a brat, and he should always be sassy, and he should always be, just terrible to his parents, and just underhanded and all that stuff. And that's what those TV shows were teaching them. And so I didn't really want them taking that into their head. We had to stop watching Caillou when my child was little, because Caillou whines. He whines all the time. And when they watched Caillou that morning, they whined all of the time. And I'm like, oh no, I am not dealing with whining all day. There's just no way. So we had to stop watching that. At one point, I remember we were watching SpongeBob. And okay, of all the characters on SpongeBob, yes, they're mostly annoying. Which character would you least like your child to act like?
Squidward.
Guess who Reagan wanted to act like?
Squidward.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it was bad.
Wasn't SpongeBob.
It was not SpongeBob. At least SpongeBob is nice.
No, I'm saying it wasn't the TV show.
Oh, it wasn't the TV show?
No.
Yeah, it was, because we stopped watching it and you stopped acting that way.
Okay, whatever.
Megan says he's just like that all the time. No, he's not. It was just, it was so, so for about a month or two, we stopped watching that and he got over it. But that'll happen with your kids' friends as well. And that'll happen with the groups of people that you hang out with. So if you decide that your kids are going to go we went to a church that was very big, and I loved my church, and I loved the fact that it was really diverse. But the kids in the church were not, it was a church to reach out to new people. And so the kids in the church were not always coming from the very best homes and things like that either. And so while you want your child to be a light to those people, you don't necessarily want your children picking up everything from those people too. So just really be aware of who your kids are hanging out with, and especially in a lot of situations, and not just in schools, in public schools, but in a lot of situations, there's a lot of indoctrination going on that you don't even realize is happening. And we see that in certain organizations more than other organizations. But if you get involved in, say you get involved in a sport that is like Pee-wee football or Little League or something like that, there are teams that are better than other teams. And so you want to really be, as a parent, be very vigilant about what you want your child to be exposed to. And parents, and homeschool parents, are often criticized for being for sheltering their children too much. And I'm not sure you can really shelter your children too much, because you want them to be, you want them to not learn about things that they don't need to learn about until they're ready to learn about them. But you also don't want to be a helicopter parent. I was accused of being a helicopter parent. Mr. Gilbert used to think I was a helicopter parent, which is hilarious because I'm one of the few that is not in that group. It was funny because I think that was Reagan's fault, because he would tell Mr. Gilbert that I was going to be mad if Mr. Gilbert didn't do such and such to help Reagan. And he would use me as an excuse. But the helicopter parents tend to do things for their kids. And kids need to learn how to fail. And we see this in public and in private school too. There was a kid in one of the private schools that my husband was substituting for, that his nanny did his schoolwork. She did all of it. She wrote all his papers. She wrote all this stuff. So then when he'd get in to go do a test, he'd fail it. And so that the parents would come down there, raise hell, and just cause a stink. And because it was a private school, and an expensive private school, parents a lot of times got away with that stuff. And it ended up being I just don't think it's going to be good for the kid in the long run, because at some point that child is going to figure out that that's not how the world works. The world does not go to your whims, and your parents can't just force everything to work for you. And I think at some point he's going to have a moment that's like, oh my God, what's going on? And it's better not to have that. It's better to kind of prepare your kids for things and allow them to fail, because that, as Tiffany said, that's where you learn is, okay, we learned that didn't work. Let's move on to something that does work. And so as far as being weird, it's okay. It's all right if they're weird, because everybody has a little weirdness in it, and that's what makes the world diverse. What's your feeling on the socialization thing?
Having my kids were so different. And my oldest one was fine being homeschooled. He doesn't really feel like he didn't feel like he missed out on anything. And back then, Matthew graduated in 2009. So it's been 11 years now. Wow. Sorry.
All right, I know.
We really just had Christmas play as in our homeschool community. We moved here from San Antonio. San Antonio had a lot more stuff. But that was like our first year. Well, that was like our second year homeschooling, but we had a break in between when we went to public school. We went to private school. And so I was just kind of getting into the homeschool group, and we had started going to some field trips, and I'd heard that they had a co-op, but didn't know what a co-op was, and was just starting to learn about it. But when we moved here, all there was Christmas play. Co-op had started, but it was for high school students. And so I already had all my material, so I didn't know that he needed to do that. Now, looking back, I might have done a little bit more of that. And dual credit was not even on our radar. You had early enrollment back then. But basically that was kind of saying that, your child was ready for college, and so they started college. So it wasn't dual credit. So it was great to have an outlet such as Christmas play. And even at our church that we were going to at the time, everybody knew that he was homeschooled. Matthew's more like his dad. He's a little bit more book smart, and not real social. He's not like socially like outgoing. Yes, he's more book smart and a little socially awkward. Even still to this day, he's 29. But Jonathan, on the other hand, was the life of the party. Everywhere we went, Jonathan had friends, and he did end up going back to public school because we didn't have much. We had Christmas play, and he wanted to play sports. He wanted the school dances. And Matthew, there was a family who did offer they did some school dances for us, but then some stuff happened at the school dance, so not good situation. But Jonathan wanted that social environment and the whole high school experience, so to speak. And the church we were going to, most of his friends were going to a public school that's not like in our town. It's a little outside of our town, but it's a smaller country type of school. And so there was a lot of peer pressure for him because he was the weird homeschooler. Even during youth group stuff, the youth pastor would say, everybody has their friend who's not a Christian. Right. You need to reach out to that friend. And Jonathan came to me and he's like, I don't have a friend that's not a Christian. Who do I reach out to? Who can I even share the gospel with? Because that was a part of our lifestyle and who we were as a homeschool family and who we are as people. Is church was a huge part of our life. And so he said, there's nobody that, he didn't feel like there was anybody that challenged his faith and that asked him to step out of the box and peer pressure, because he had his homeschool friends and he had his church friends. And most of those people were all church people, or people of faith. And so he felt like he was not being challenged in that way. And so he wanted that. And so letting him go to a public school and being in that social situation, that was hard on a mama's heart. I really didn't like him, honestly. I did not like who he became when he got around those people. Yeah, so he was now more socially accepted because at church, because he was now going to school with all of them, and he wasn't the weird homeschool kid. But I think that there are things that you learn both ways.
There was a lot of rebellion, I remember.
Yes, there was a lot of rebellion, lots of rebellion. And the hard thing is, and I think that that's might be, if we need another session, it can be about mom's heart and letting your kids leave and what happens there, because I can talk about that one. Because I think the nice thing is having so many different social activities now for homeschoolers is that it's becoming more normal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more acceptable. I mean, Jonathan graduated in 2013, so, that wasn't that long ago, but, in the scheme of things. But in the homeschool world, that was a long time ago, where it was a lot less was going on. It was a lot less accepted. It was less mainstream. And of course, with COVID, it has made all of this kind of more mainstream. And, it's like all the memes we saw of, oh, all of a sudden the homeschoolers aren't the weird ones anymore. Because we kind of know how to do this. And, but I think that homeschool has come such a long way in allowing our kids to have the different social activities and to have the same memories that their public school peers have. So whenever they're out in the workforce and somebody says, oh my gosh, prom, do you remember going to prom? And your kid can actually say, yep, do. My oldest one doesn't. He didn't have that. So he's like, nope, don't know anything about it. But now it's getting, I think that's one of the great things that we did, is starting to do more social activities for our homeschool kids. So again, though, you can plan so many activities that you run out of time for school, you run out of time for house cleaning, you run out of time for family time. And then it can almost make the dad feel like he's not a part of your life, because there's so much social activity, because it's social time for the kids and for the moms, because we are kind of,
Stuck at home
in our own little box, in our own little world with what's going on around us. And so getting out and being able to see other moms, I mean, it's like, oh, I'm never going to let you go. And you kind of latch on to those people. And my kids would be like, Mom, this ended an hour ago. Can we leave? And I'm like, no, the moms are still talking. We're fine. Y'all just go play.
my daughter would go, and they figured out that when we were all in a room and talking, that if they kept a low profile and didn't come out, we wouldn't make them leave.
Yeah, my kids are usually ready to leave. I mean, also because my kids are so far apart in age, that we were at play practice from the time it started to the time it ended, or speech and drama practice, because Matthew was in the high school class, Jonathan was in middle school, and Allison was in the elementary class. And so we were there all day long. And so they were like, oh, I'm just ready to go home. And Allison is my one that she needs quiet, and she's not a people person. She needs that time to recharge alone. And I am not. I am a people person, and people recharge me. And so it was really hard after she was the only one at home, because Mom's still socializing and like, yeah, what else is going on? And Allison's going,
right, we need to go.
No. Mom. So, the mom socialization is a great thing as well whenever you get into that. Excuse me. So will your kids be weird? Yeah, but not as weird as they used to be.
Yeah.
Because now all the public school kids have had to learn at home.
Figure out how to do this, yeah.
So, and now with so many different avenues out there, there's so many things that you can find for your kids to be able to experience different stuff. So many groups. There's a group up in Dallas. I mean, we're in Corpus Christi, but there was a group in Dallas that does a prom, and their prom is like,
yes,
300 kids from all around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we've had kids that go up to that prom.
Yeah.
Because they're open to everybody. They don't care.
Yeah.
Just be a homeschool kid and you can come. And so, couldn't imagine driving 7 hours to get to prom, but whatever.
Yeah. Tell you what, that prom there, that is its own 501c3. It is its own being. It is crazy big.
Yeah.
But that's,
just get out there and find stuff to do for your kids.
Yeah.
So that they can have, different activities. Because that's something that, when you go to the grocery store, the older people will ask your kids, oh, what do you do for, you're just at home doing school, and they're going to look at you and what about socialization? Family members still ask that same question, what about socialization? And
You can
homeschool kids,
socialize yourself out of school.
yeah,
It's really
homeschool
cute.
kids are so much more well-rounded if they just would talk to them and then go talk to a public school kid and kind of see, not that there's anything wrong with public school kids, but just the fact that homeschool kids can talk to people of all ages. Whereas a public school kid, they really aren't sure how to talk to an older person
Yeah.
or, somebody who's not in their grade level. So,
Yeah.
be weird, homeschool your kid. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Even if they don't always see the benefits, whenever they grow up, and have kids of their own, I think that's whenever it will come around full circle and they'll go, where's that light bulb that you have? Light bulb moment.
Yeah.
That is, yep, there it is.
Yeah.
So it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah, it's funny because so I watched the chat from some of the girls that are our girls' age, and they're talking about they're now having their own babies, and they're married, and they're like, and one of them was talking about TikTok, and she's like, I'm so glad that my mom wouldn't let us get on stuff like that when we were young, because the stuff that these kids are seeing is just incredible and just so damaging in some ways. And they were protected from that. And at the time, these are the girls that were like sneaking it because they didn't want, they wanted to be exposed to the stuff. They wanted to know what was going on, and they wanted to be in all of that. And these are the parents that were picking up the phones at night and putting them in a box and not letting the kids have them because they'd be on the phone at 3:00 in the morning. And,
and because the kids want to be with it, they want to be in the know of what's going on so that they don't look weird whenever they're talking to their friends at church or in the neighborhood or whatever. They want to know what's going on. But yeah, I was talking to my oldest son about that the other day because he was on Facebook, got off of Facebook for probably 4 or 5 years, and he just recently got back on. And he's going, it was so much nicer without it. He's like, but I want it because he lives in California and is far away. But I've said, yeah, if I could do it again, I would probably not let y'all get Facebook as soon as y'all were of age.
Yeah.
I mean, Facebook didn't come out till Matthew was 17. So,
yeah, my kids were weird in that they didn't get cell phones until they were like 15, which was really weird for that time because most of the kids were starting to get them at about 10 or 9, and I see kids that are 6 or 7 having them now.
Yeah.
That opportunity for bad stuff to come in, and they don't know what's bad, and it's funny to watch these kids now going, I am so thankful you protected me from that, because they don't know what they don't know. And that goes for your social circle too. You want to make sure that in some ways you protect them, because they will be grateful later. It takes until they're in their 20s. And it's a joke. It's a joke about, you get married and you have kids and then you go, oh my God, my mom was right. Mom has to wait 20 years to hear for you to say she's right. But in your heart, you're doing the right thing for those kids. And homeschooling falls under that. And there's a lot of parents that I said yesterday, the parents are opinionated. They are. And the reason that they're opinionated is because they love their children and they want their children to have the best. And so there's good things, there's bad things about homeschooling. Always. There's occasionally, I went to the doctor's once and we were doing, I had the 2 kids with me, and they were probably 10 or 11 or 12, and they had their books and they were there doing their math. And we had it was an elderly lady who had been a public school teacher who was giving us the stink eye and said some snide comments and things like that. And I was like, well, you know what? It's your problem, not mine, because I know I'm doing the right thing for my kids. But for the most part, when I go out, we go to the grocery store. Used to be my husband would take he would take the kids with him. And if a clerk would go, what, are you sick today? Or something like that. He'd look at him and go, what are you doing here? You know, or something like that, just something silly to kind of break the tension. But most people, when my kids walk up to them and they tell them that they're homeschooled, they go, oh, you are so lucky. I wish I could have done for that for my kids.
Yeah.
And people feel, a lot of times if you say you're homeschooling, people feel the need to defend why they're not necessarily doing it. And I don't care why you're, you know, I don't care where you put your kids. If you put your kids in public school, good, that might be good for your family. If you put your kids in private school, great, might be good for your family. My family, the homeschooling was the right choice. A lot of people are finding now with the COVID stuff that maybe homeschooling is the right choice. Maybe it's not. There are a lot of parents out there that are like the commercial, the lady, you take my kids, you want a yellow notebook? I'll give you 10 yellow notebooks. You know, there's people of all different views on their kids. Homeschoolers like hanging out with their kids. That's just how it is. If you can find a way to homeschool your kids and it works for your family, then do it. You can do it. There's no reason you cannot do it. So step out in faith.
Yeah, homeschooling's not for everyone.
No, it's
And
not.
not everyone should homeschool.
Right.
I think you have to take it.
That with COVID for sure.
Yeah.
Finding that as an option.
Yeah, a kid by kid, family by family basis.
Exactly.
But I think that as a mom, you can homeschool even if you think that you can't. If you have a desire to, because remember, who taught your kids how to walk? Who taught them how to go potty? Who taught them how to talk? Mom did. And so, you know, homeschool is just an extension of that. And yeah, sometimes you might have to go read a chapter ahead of them to be able to understand what they're fixing to start learning, because it's been a few years since you were taking that class. But you can do it. So
it's a lot like when you teach your kids how to walk. You teach your kids how to walk and they fall down. You teach your kid how to walk and they fall down. And if you go and you're not gonna say, oh, I give up. We just want to teach you how to walk. Why you don't do that with homeschool either. You continue, and if it takes you 2 years to learn how to walk, you still teach that child how to walk. You teach that child how to read. You teach that child how to do math. And to be honest with you, not every public school will do that. They will go, oh, you're crawling, you're holding things up, you can move on. And they're not reading, you can move on. It's okay. And kids get passed up to higher grades, especially in schools that don't have real good school budgets. They're like, there's so many kids that they have to worry about, that the ones who aren't either academic or especially behavioral problems, a lot of times they get lost if they're kind of mediocre. Like she was talking about yesterday in the special ed stuff, that if they get to a certain point, they are considered average or adequate. And once they get to that adequate point, it doesn't matter, they get to move up. And that's something that as homeschoolers, we're more aware of, that we can't let our kids do that, because, and even though kids would like to do that sometimes, we can't do that because we know that that's not what's best for the kids.